What's happening, guys? Happy Wednesday and welcome to the Dynasty WarZone, the People's Dynasty podcast. On today's show, we are going to talk about where we would have the rookies from the 2022 class intermingled with the rookies of the 2023 class. But before I do that, I want to make sure I introduce you to my co-host for the evening. You know him more as the man of the hour and the man with the power. Jerry Sinclair, how the blue hell are you?
I'm okay, but it's because I didn't think I was going to get to talk to you, and here I am talking to you. You, on the other hand, you had more enjoyable things planned, and that unfortunately did not come through. But how are you otherwise?
Dude, I'm great. I've been a big weekend of talking fantasy football where I didn't think I was going to be talking fantasy football. I just shared with you how I missed my little weekend getaway to Vegas. I was going to go to Vegas with my wife and son. I could not wait to see my 15-year-old cruising the strip in Las Vegas. The showgirls, the people there for bachelorette parties, just kind of the things that you see in Vegas. It was going to be a lot of fun. But unfortunately, due to that weather system that came through the Midwest and, prayers to the people in Arkansas and all over the Midwest that saw horrific tornado damage, I by no means took the worst of it. But yeah, couldn't get our flights rescheduled. We were only going to be gone for 2.5 days. So it wasn't really worth flying into Vegas on Sunday to then turn around and come home on Monday. But hey, man, that's why we're here. This is why you should be subscribed everywhere. If you were subscribed to the Dynasty WarZone YouTube channel, you would have caught this on Sunday night. Jerry and I talking rookies. I took Jerry's one evening, one free from fantasy football, hanging out with Mrs. Jerry, and you would see his beautiful Detroit Tigers hat. Now, are you actually a Tigers fan, keeping track of what the boys are doing? Or are you just trying to make sure people know you're from the mean streets of Detroit there in Iowa and they leave you the hell alone?
I am. That's awesome. I am more of a fair weather Tigers fan. I don't love baseball. I don't love pro basketball either. But also because I'm sort of, I only root for them really when they're good. So I don't have a right to bitch when they're bad. You know what I mean? Like on this podcast, I've complained about the Detroit Lions a lot, but it's because I watch them and I care about them even though they're bad. That's not so the case with like when Justin Verlander and Cabrera and Scherzer were dominating. Of course, I watched every Tigers game I could, but no, this is just because I'm a trashy tool who's got to rep the city.
I mean, you make it look good. I'll be honest. I'm wearing.
No. The Old English D makes everything else look good, my friend.
It's one of the better logos. A lot of teams in an attempt over the years to drum up extra uniforms and hat and other trinkets and gimmick sales have altered or messed with their uniform. The Philadelphia Phillies have done this. They've bounced from the old one to the new one, back to the old one. The Padres have done this. The Marlins were actually wearing a really clean throwback as the Marlins are one of the newer-ish teams in Major League Baseball. But I could talk baseball all day. I'm actually wearing my son's travel league hat as we speak. I don't have a bunch of fancy MLB hats like Jerry. Maybe I should get one. That'd be a good one.
This was actually my first one. I've never actually, and that's a rare thing for people from Michigan. Everybody's got the Old English D hat. I never had one just because I'm not a super Tigers fan, and I felt like it was weird for me to have it. But now that I'm not there, always Detroit versus everybody.
Detroit versus everybody. Well, let's get going with the fantasy football takes before people stop listening. That's what they're here for. I'll talk about the patron in just a minute, guys. I'll ask you now, and I'll remind you at the end of the show. Pretty pleased with sugar on top. Head over to YouTube and subscribe. A lot of podcasts say notifications, turn them on, turn them off. I don't care. I'm looking for subs. Stop by when you get a hair. When your podcast queue is dry on Mondays, if you have us subscribed on YouTube, and sometimes your podcast queue can be dry. You're like, there's nothing to listen to. And you know what? That was a snap. You snapped your fingers. You're like, you know what? I'm going to go to YouTube and I'm going to watch the Dynasty WarZone a day or so early because I know other podcasts will come out. You'll see me and Jerry. You'll see my podcast studio set up. You'll see James Gandolfini to my left. You'll see Bo Jackson right behind me. You'll see Jerry's whiteboard. He may draw up a play or two. Please head over to YouTube and subscribe. And if you're a podcast listener, thank you. Also, feel free just to hit the pause button as long as you're not driving. Leave us a review. Leave us a 5-star rating. It goes a tremendous way in helping the Dynasty Warzone. That being said, Jerry, I had some time on my hands as I thought I was not going to be doing anything, like no yard work, no baseball practice, no honey-do list. I was free and clear. Now, on our Patreon podcast, before I hit the record button, I told you my poker exploits. Mm-hmm. I was going a little crazy with the cheese whiz on Twitter. Now, Jerry, I know you're busy on the weekends because your job kind of demands it.
True. And Iowa women's made the Final Four. They lost today, which gives me so much joy because I love to see Hawkeye fans upset. But yes, it has been an absolute shit show, and it was super nice this weekend. You're going to get it tomorrow, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's going to be like 67. I'm off work, though, because of the whole situation.
Absolutely beautiful today. It was Midwest summer for us, so you're going to love tomorrow.
Can't wait. I'm sure my wife will have work for me because I can only get away with not doing work so many days in a row. But I'm going to leave this person out of it because I don't want to come off as an old man yelling at cloud. Because remember, I said this last week. This is me now.
I'm hurt and I'm old and I'm fucking tired and I work with fucking children.
Well, Jerry's not children, but people on Twitter, guys, this is the time of the year where you're getting really shitty advice. And I don't want to name names because this is not going to be positive. It's a good person. It's a bad tweet, but I'm going to be a little bit negative. Guys, be really fucking leery of advice you can't implement into your dynasty team. This guy was talking about how Daniel Jones is not good for your dynasty roster, how Kirk Cousins is not good for your dynasty roster, and that you're basically an idiot and a simp if you're not out stacking Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. And, of course, good friend of the show. And, Jerry, would you consider Dan Williamson to be a good dynasty player?
Yeah.
Yeah, Dan's pretty fucking good. I'm gonna recommend that if you play in a league with Dan, be prepared to be at a mismatch. Maybe on your best day, you're even with Dan. And he's no dummy.
No, he does not do stupid shit.
He does not. And so Dan was
I can sprinkle in some stupid shit, let me tell you, but Dan does not.
Dan plays strong. And Dan was on this tweet as well. Guys, I'm not going to go too far into this tweet, but it does kind of segue into a couple others that we wanted to make part of this show tonight. So, guys, you're going to get a lot of bad dynasty advice this season, but I want to share with you some conversations that I had. Jerry, are you ready?
Fire away. So
there's this new Twitter handle. I guess they're a podcast. They're called the FantasyScape Podcast. Give them a little shout out here on the show at FantasyScape_something. If you search at FantasyScape, I'm assuming you'll find them. And they tweeted out on Saturday. They said, identifying good players is only the first step in Dynasty. Being able to identify value is the next step in creating dynasty teams. It's okay to trade away good assets for better ones. And I like this tweet, Jerry. I gave it a little heart, and then I retweeted it because I had to set the record straight. Are you ready for my rebuttal?
Okay.
Uncle Memphis, because remember,
I'm hurt and I'm old and I'm fucking tired and I work with fucking children.
And Uncle Memphis said, while identifying players is important, roster construction, knowing where your roster is versus the league and how to move accordingly is the first step in Dynasty. Anybody can walk into Lowe's and pick out a good 2x4. The real builders know how to build with it, Jerry. That is my thing. I think too often, especially in rookie season, coming out of free agency season, I think sometimes, as a good friend of mine used to say, we get a little crazy with the cheese whiz. We get a little crazy with the cheese whiz, and we just want to get players, and we'll figure it out later. See, I've never bought into that theory. Jerry, when I read those tweets, what do you think? Now, do you think that having a strategy and a plan and a way to build your team based on where you're at in your league is important? Or do you think identifying players is important? Because by the way, this is not good people, bad tweets. This is just a good tweet, actually, from some people that I'm giving a plug that inspired thought and conversation, Jer.
I mean, it's definitely a little bit of both. The problem with player evaluations is that it's the primary focus of just about 90% of the people that play this game, or at least make content for this game. I don't know if it's all the players or not. And it has always been something that I don't take as seriously anymore. It's just, you hear a bunch of the same things, and everything is always rainbows and sunshine every time. Or
best case scenario. Everything they tweet out is best case scenario.
Or it's unreasonable hatred. And there's never anybody out there comparing a player to Sterling Shepard, who was a good prospect, and it didn't work out. Like, there's not people comparing to Corey Davis, who was a great prospect and didn't work out. You're just not seeing those things. You're seeing extreme comparisons to outliers and elite players. This is this year's James Robinson. This is this year's Dameon Pierce. This is this year's Randy Moss. This is Justin Jefferson. And I've probably said some shit like that about Jackson Smith and Jigba too. Don't get me wrong. I'm a sucker too. But that's why I'm not a huge fan of that. I have always been a person that believes that you need to have a strategy, and it's not just your own team, right? Like you said, you need to understand the situation of other league members. Like, we are in a 1QB, the TFFG league. Now, P-Win has an absolute fucking monster that is just prison sexing us, for lack of a better phrase.
I mean, that's gonna be a new verb in my lexicon. Prison sexing.
Yeah,
I'm getting prison sexed. That's the past tense, by the way. Prison sexed.
You don't want to be on the receiving end of one of those.
Yeah, absolutely
anyway,
not.
He's got a great team, but it's also pretty young. And he was trying to get a trade, because I have Saquon Barkley, where he was going to get Saquon Barkley. And I told him, like, it's probably just not feasible, because at some point I have to try and win. And that time is not now, because his team is better than mine. So I need to kick it down the road a little bit until his team can sort of age out and I can have a shot at least. So I was like, you would have to pay me a stupid amount. And I was like, honestly, it's only because it was you. I was like, if somebody else was trying to trade for Saquon Barkley, I'd be much more apt to trade for him. It's things like that. And maybe I'm just overreacting, and maybe that's just something that's not, maybe you should always be trying to, quote unquote, take good players and get better players. But no, I am a person that firmly believes in construction and understanding your league mates. And that's sort of why I have pivoted away from the 1-year punt situation too, because I think more and more people are doing it, and it shits on that strategy. It doesn't work if you're not the person zigging when everyone else is zagging.
Well, I think, George, as it relates to the 1-year punt or the productive struggle, I think in Superflex that doesn't exist. And Jordan McNamara, guest of the show, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, did a really good job of bringing that thought to my head. But I think it doesn't matter what your goal is. No matter what your goal is, you should be acquiring players for that goal. If you're doing a startup, I know a lot of startups are going on right now. You should 100% be building and drafting and acquiring either picks or players. Hey, I'm gonna go young. I'm gonna load up on young guys. I'm gonna reach around early on Garrett Wilson, or I'm gonna reach early on this young wide receiver, and that's gonna be the core of my team. And I know they're gonna do good this year, and I'm probably gonna finish, at the 104, the 105 in my league, but that's okay. Maybe if I get lucky and catch the right guy, I'm going to go Rachaad White, and I'm going to go all these young guys. Okay, cool. Then you shouldn't be trading away your first later in the draft. You have to have a strategy. You might be able to get, you shouldn't trade away your first, and I don't know where Derrick Henry's going right now in Dynasty startups, but you shouldn't trade away your first and, let's say, the 4th round to draft Derrick Henry. After taking 3 guys that says I'm going young. Derrick Henry's a good player, but is he a good player for what you're doing? So this is a conversation that's worth having. Whatever your team's in, whether it's your startup season, rebuild season, you're just trying to tune up a contender from whatever that is, You need to be making moves that correlate with those goals. It's the same thing if you're on a diet. If you're trying to lose weight, your daily food intake has to match those goals. So that's not just helpful for your dynasty roster, that's helpful for everything. If I'm going to do this, then the actions that you take should correlate to the goals you want to achieve. Because if it doesn't, you're not going to get the results that you want. So that was the first tweet I wanted to cover. Jerry, can we cover one more?
Yeah, let me expand on that.
Sure. Yeah, go give me a minute to find my other tweet.
I think dynasty players are exquisite at sticking to a plan in the startup, right? Like if they want to, I'm going to win now, or I'm going to go young, or, I'm going to do whatever, and they will stick to it. And that is that. But by the time we get 365 days later and we're in the next off season, it's like your whole strategy is just out the door. Here's the thing. Like if you are drafting and you want to punt the first year, you want to do this productive struggle thing, but then you have accumulated all of these picks and you have a young core, stop sticking with that. If the plan was to be young to set a base so you could have all these picks, don't just pick all the picks because a lot of them are going to miss. Use them to get you players who can win you the championship. Like you want to talk about trading a first for Derrick Henry on a young team. You don't do it in the startup, right? You don't need him. But like right now, he's relatively cheap to acquire. And if you have a good foundation of quarterbacks and wide receivers, which have it, okay, Derrick Henry can win you a championship. Dalvin Cook can win you a championship. The problem is that I see is that players will stick with it. They will continuously want to be young. And if you continuously want to be young, you will never win. You will have all the sizzle and you can send a screenshot onto your Twitter profile and you'll get all the likes that you want. And you'll get that self-recognition, but you will not win the money. You will not win the trophy, and you will not laugh in your friend's face because somebody's going to have Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey and, older guys, and they're going to win. And they're going to have steak and not sizzle.
Well, I think if you go back and look at last year's like top scorers on both sides of the ledger, there wasn't a lot of rookies mixed in there. There wasn't a lot of year two guys. It was a
27-year-old guys.
It was a lot of veterans, a lot of Christian McCaffreys and Devontae Adams and George Kittles and Travis Kelce's, and those are the guys out there winning the bread. So it's great, and you have to. That's what makes Dynasty so fun. Is it so fucking hard?
It is hard.
If it was easier, it'd be your mom. All right, I'm just kidding. Kinda. All right, Jerry. And then once I don't have like a Britney Spears drop, like every once in a while, like, oops, I did it again. About once, it seems like once a week. Like last week, it was a Will Levis tweet. On Twitter now, it shows you the number of views that your tweets received. And I think my Will Levis one, and it was like last Monday, and I just heard this in a podcast, and I was like, it was like that record scratch moment. And it had mentioned Will Levis's pass completion percentage the last 2 years in college compared to Bryce Young's pass completion percentage the last 2 years in college. And they're virtually the same. They're both around 65, 66%, right? So that was my viral tweet of the week last week. It was seen by like 34,000 people, which is a lot for me. I've got like 5,500-ish followers on Twitter. I'm by no means a Twitter juggernaut. But Sunday morning, I was thinking to myself, no, Jerry, I'll tell you where the genesis of this comes from in just a second. But would you consider Bryce Young or CJ Stroud to be in that Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts group of like running style quarterbacks?
I mean, yeah.
Because I don't know. I mean, they're not going to run at all though. Hardly. I mean, they didn't in college.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get that rushing upside, right?
Right.
So in order for them to score, Stroud showed a little bit in the national championship game, but that was really like the first time. So is that his new MO, or is that just a one-time thing?
Right.
So in order for those kind of quarterbacks to be successful, so then the tweet said, does 4,200 yards and 31 TDs sound like a good average year for CJ Stroud or Bryce Young? Oh, it does. Great. You just drafted Kirk Cousins average in Minnesota with your rookie 103, 104, or 105 in Superflex. and it really befuddled a lot of people. Let me tell you where I was coming from, Jerry. First of all, I always loved Kirk Cousins on this podcast? Derek Carr, Daniel Jones, QBs, Jared Goff, QBs like that.
True.
They are the quintessential QB2 priced guys that will give you QB1 type production. Kirk Cousins has for the majority of his 5-year run in Minnesota. The problem is much like Stephen A. Smith or, Daniel Jeremiah or Colin Cowherd, we want to get rid of Kirk Cousins every chance we get. That was the tweet that really chapped me and Dan's ass on Saturday. Was like the example is that you're never going to win in Dynasty if you have Kirk Cousins and you have Daniel Jones. And I'm like, wait a second, but aren't you the same guy who likes CJ Stroud and Bryce Young? Because that's what you're hoping for. Because without that rushing upside, without that rushing floor that even a Daniel Jones gives you 700 yards last year, you're hoping for a guy that's going to give you 42 to 4,500 passing yards and 30 touchdowns. But you hate Kirk Cousins. The Vikings are never going to win a championship because of him. He's boring milquetoast for our fantasy teams. But you're happy to recommend and be super high on the guy whose ceiling is Kirk fucking Cousins. That's what drives me crazy. This is why, as Dynasty content consumers, Jerry and I are very transparent about our process. I don't pretend to love one guy when I'm promoting another guy that's just like the guy. It drives me crazy, Jerry. Does any of that make sense? Or am I, again, just old man yelling at cloud?
I mean, maybe a little bit of both. But I hear you, right? But the difference is A, they don't look like Kirk Cousins, so the narrative is different.
Well, they're the sizzle. Kirk Cousins is the steak. He's the QB9 last year. QB 8-9. Yes. He's the steak. CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, they got an Alabama logo on their helmet. They got a Buckeye on their helmet. They're young. They're 21. They're 22. They're sexy. They were just on our TV on Saturdays. We love Devi. We love college. So, of course, they're better than Kirk Cousins. I got news for you. You and the team that drafts them will be fucking thrilled if they're Kirk Cousins at the NFL level. And that's the problem. For what we do, give me Kirk Cousins. Oh, fine. You got the 106? Fine. I'll give you my 103 for Kirk Cousins and the 106. Because you want CJ Stroud. You want Bryce Young. Cool. I'm going to get the same amount of fantasy points, and I'm getting the plus. That's the point. Give me Jared Goff. If he signs an extension in Detroit, give me Jared Goff. Give me the plus. We're going to find
out in like 3 weeks.
Sure. Give me the 17-point per game dynasty asset, because most of y'all's leagues are lucky if they make it 3+ years. Now, some of you play in leagues like patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone where we don't have leagues fold, or maybe the FFPC like our buddy Theo from Player Profiler. But a lot of you play in leagues where leagues fold. And give me Jared Goff in the plus, Jerry. I know I can look past the sexy names and realize 18 points a game is still 18 points a game.
Yeah, I did see your tweet, and I read some of the comments, and it was always, I'll pay that for a 21-year-old. I don't want to pay that for a 34-year-old. My rebuttal to that, and I get where they're coming from, right? But we're talking about their ceiling, really. Like, you can't assume that these guys are going to come in and be Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's nonsense. That's absolute fucking nonsense.
I think 4,530 is their ceiling. That's a good ceiling.
It is. It is a very good ceiling. And if that is what they are, eventually I will like to pay that. I would like to acquire them. But they are extremely expensive right now. And to your argument, you could get the plus. You can get the juice. So why not get the juice? And here's the thing. Like, is Kirk Cousins going anywhere? Honestly, do you believe that Kirk Cousins is going to be out of this league in 2 years? Because I don't.
What's their plan to replace him? They're going to be good. They're the best team based on last year's record, and you got to assume Aaron Rodgers is going to be gone in Green Bay. I mean, we like Detroit. I mean, I know you do, especially. And of course, the Bears have made some adjustments, but I don't see there's a world where Minnesota is like anything worse than like 9-8. So you're not going to have the ammunition to be able to pay up and get Drake May or Caleb Williams. So what are you doing at quarterback? You're going to take Kirk Cousins for another 2-year deal, and you're going to see what shakes out. And I got news for you. If they don't, someone's going to take Kirk Cousins on a 2-year deal. Whether that's Bill Belichick.
Smith got a job. Jimmy Garoppolo got a job.
We just hate boring in Dynasty, guys. Boring wins, and that's my whole point. Is watch out for hypocrites. People will kill Kirk Cousins, but tell you to go draft C.J. Stroud, and I'm like, wait a second. Because first of all, in Superflex, you should have your stud. You should have at least one. I know that one guy was like, go get Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. We'd all love to, dumb, but that's not how it works. That's not how it works in 2023. There's too much good information out there about Dynasty. So it doesn't work that way anymore. But if you can, cool. But if not, if you do, you're probably going to cripple your team for years to come. And you're going to have 2 really good quarterbacks, and it's going to take you 4 years of rebuilding or hitting on some miracle rookie picks to get that roster where you want it to be. But at the end of the day, be avoidance of hypocrites, and remember, points are points. I don't care if it's 30-year-old. How old is Jared Goff? He came in 2016, so
he's got to be like
28, 29.
Maybe.
Give me 20, because if Jared Goff loses his job in Detroit, he's going to get another one. Give me those type of guys. If they're all in a bucket, and we look back in 3 years, and over the course of those 3 years, C.J. Stroud, Jared Goff, Danny Dimes, all these guys end up giving you 18 points a game, and you could have got additional players to help your roster. Who cares? Who cares who gives you the 18 points a game? If they were giving you money, if they were just stopping by your house and would you care who's handing you that $20 bill? Does it matter if they're 34? Does it matter if they're 29? No. You're getting the thing. So don't get caught up in the names. Don't get caught up in the ages. Just go win. All this shit is cyclical anyway.
Don't get caught up in the names that you continuously hear for short periods of time. And the thing about rookie drafts and rookie talk is that you hear the same names for such a short period of time that it creates additional value with each one. The NFL player pool of all 12 or 9 or 8 draft classes being combined into one, you don't get to hear the same names except for the elite players.
Yeah, just so this is not just
not all elite players. That's the thing. A lot of rookies shit the bed. So it's just the problem is we just continuously talk about them for a short period of time, and it inflates value. I hear you.
I would just leave it at this: be very leery of not, because you're going to hear this for the next month. You're going to hear the same analyst or fantasy content creator say, you can't win a championship with Kirk Cousins. And then you're going to hear him say, draft C.J. Stroud. It's a big hustle. It's a big myth. But Jerry, we're going to move up. But that was good people. Lots of tweets.
Here's the thing. You can win with C.J. Stroud and Kirk Cousins.
But you're not going to win because of them. You're going to win in spite of them. They're just along for the ride. They're a cog in the wheel.
Correct.
They're a part of the machine. You're going to win
the juice that you need. You need that QB2 to just be a little bit better than the other person's QB2, and that's what they are. QB2 cost, QB1 production. Let's hope Stroud can hit that.
Whether it's a wide receiver, whether it's a running back, whether it's some guys you're going to win in spite of, or they're going to help, and some guys you win because of. You win because of Patrick Mahomes. That's why you take the risk on Anthony Richardson. You win because of Jalen Hurts. You win because of Josh Allen. And because we've seen Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen, you've got to take that swing on Anthony Richardson. I understand, because one of these guys is going to bust. The math just says bust. So that's how you win. So a lot of these guys you're not going to win because of. They're just going to be part of your machine. And if they're not the reason why you're going to win, I don't really care who's part of my machine, as long as I'm getting the machine to function at a functioning level. So, Jerry, let's move on. We have some rookies to comp. I'm going to put you on the spot. I'm going to beat Jerry up a little bit. I'm going to hit him with some dukes here in just a second. But that was a lot of good people with a lot of random tweets, and that is brought to you by our patron, patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. Now, Neil, our admin, been very busy, and he is going to help us. We're going to test Sleeper and see what sleeper will let us do from a configuration standpoint. Jerry, you are familiar with a former host of this show and friend of the show, John Sheps of the Toilets to Titles. Many years ago, he got me into playing Dynasty IDP. And here was the scoring and the roster setting format, okay? Super flex, tight end premium, 1.75 tight end premium, must start 2. So you started 10 on the offense. 2 of them had to be a tight end, 1 QB, 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, and the other 5 positions were up to you. Then on the defensive side, you also started 10. And it was a very defensive end heavy. Linebackers, as traditionally in IDP, were big, point scorers. And then your safeties and corners were just kind of like, filler. You had to start like 1 or 2 of them. But that's the kind of league I'm thinking our next patron's going to be. And the reason why is that puts a lot of strategy into the draft. You just can't go in and say, well, I'm going to hammer 2 quarterbacks, or I'm going to go ultra. I'm going to go Travis Kelce in the first round because I'm going to win this league and I got to have 2. Jerry, we're in a 2 tight end league. You know how hard it is to get 2 starters on a weekend.
Yes.
Yeah, we won't talk about Jerry's tight ends in that league.
That's been my problem.
And you think the tight end pool is scarce? Wait until you start drafting defensive ends when the defensive end scoring's at a premium. So that's the kind of league that we're going to cook up. Neil and I are going to see what we can get Sleeper to do from a functionality standpoint. But if that's something that you're interested in, along with a great group chat, bonus conversations, the before I hit the record button series, all of that. We've never adjusted the price. We've never changed the price. It's still $5 a month. And that is all available over at patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone. Jump in, hit my DMs at DWZ Memphis. Say, hey, I'm joining the Patreon. Save me a spot in the next startup, and we'll see what we can do. But Jerry, enough promoting, enough commercials. Let's talk about this rookie class, Jerry. Now, we'll make it easy. We'll talk about the quarterbacks and the tight ends first. Then we'll get into meat and potatoes. How about that?
Okay, deal.
So we're going to compare this year's class, and I'm going to grill Jerry like a tuna. I'm going to grill him, and I'm going to ask him. So Jerry, let's just start with the quarterbacks, okay? So in this year's class, I think we have 4 and then like maybe a 5th if you like a guy like Hendon Hooker. So we've obviously got Anthony Richardson. We've already talked a lot about CJ Stroud. We've talked a lot about Bryce Young. Of course, a guy that I like quite a bit, Will Levis. He was actually linked to the Colts today on Twitter as we record this on a Sunday. So we have 4 quarterbacks. So as I mentioned those 4 quarterbacks, are there any of those guys that you would rather have less than Kenny Pickett? And you can take into account that Kenny Pickett's a Steeler. You know that he's got Deontay Johnson. You know he's got George Pickens and Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris and continuity with the offensive coordinator. I didn't love the offensive coordinator, but knowing all of that, would your rankings change? Like, where would you slot Kenny Pickett in with that current draft or current lot, of QBs?
See, it's weird, but because there's probably 4, maybe 5. I might put him at 5, actually, just ahead of Hendon Hooker. I think I don't love Anthony Richardson because he scares the hell out of me, but I know that if he hits, he's going to hit so much better than Kenny does, so that I would have to put him in there. I feel like him and Will Levis are sort of the same thing, but he's going to get better draft capital. I think he's going to be in. He's got to have a better offensive line situation. So him and Will Levis are close, and I would take Stroud or Love over him as well.
I would agree. So I'm going to tier it. I'm going to tier it a little bit. I have Levis and Anthony Richardson. If again, I covered this with the Toilets to Titles crew. I was on their podcast a couple weeks ago. If you've already got like a risky QB1, then I can totally not blame you for taking Stroud or Young, right? Because you should have a stud QB, right?
Yep.
You should have at a minimum, a Dak, a Watson, Lamar, Kyler. At a minimum, you should have one of those guys as your 1.
Correct.
And then you should have a QB2. Like if you're QB2 from last year and like you're fortunate enough to be in the situation where you have a Justin Fields, then you've already got a guy that's got mega super high upside ceiling to pair with your stud. If Justin Fields returns the value that he was returning last year, him and a Josh Allen, him and a Patrick Mahomes and a Justin Herbert, you're living good. But if you've got like then as that QB3, then you take a Stroud or a Young.
Yeah.
But if you've already got like say a Josh Allen and then maybe you hit like a Tua is a safe quarterback. He's going to be, I think he was rocking at one point as high as like QB8, and due to the concussions he finished in the teens. But if you got like a safe guy like Tua, like a Kirk Cousins, a guy a Daniel Jones is your QB2, you need to try to take the cover off the ball and take a Will Levis, take an Anthony Richardson. So I'm just going to throw Kenny Pickett in that safe side. He's going to be a QB 16, maybe as high as 12 if he has like a really, really good season. And that's it. He's part of a QB rotation that you're going to use. And I think that's where I've already mentioned where I think Stroud and Young are going to wind up. But if I were going to draft him from a safe perspective, I would go Stroud, Young, Levis, Richardson, Pickett. And if I was going to go from a living dangerously standpoint, I would go Richardson, Levis, Stroud, Young, Pickett. So he's right there in that 5 range. But that was the problem with last year's class.
Yeah, doo-doo.
Doo-doo. Well, let's get rid of the other doo-doo real quick. We'll talk tight end positions from last year. Literally next to no impact. We didn't get to see a lot out of Trey McBride. He was the tight end 1 from last year's class. A lot of people like Greg Dulcich. And then a guy that I really like cheap in 2 tight end premium type formats is the Colts' Jelani Woods. Had a couple of monster games, and it was pretty much known they were shopping and trying to move on from Mo Alley Cox. And Kylan Granson he is what he is. But in this class, is there anybody from last year's class? Like, where would you take Trey McBride mixed in with the Musgraves and the Michael Myers and the Darnell Washingtons? And I'm missing some. Dalton Kincaid. Where does Trey McBride fit into that? Even though the landing spots of these other guys,
I feel like he's just. This one's tough too. But I feel like they're all just the same. Tight ends is such a hard thing to do because they're all probably good enough to do what, a tight end 11 in fantasy can do. And I'm not even going to come up with a name because I think it's so hit or miss. And I think it depends how the offense goes and what the quarterback likes more so than the talent of the tight end. Because I feel like they're all talented enough and yet not transcendent enough. Except for, the select few that there are. He would just be in a pile, honestly, Randy. I mean, he had good draft capital. We thought it was going to be a good situation. Now they're probably going to get rid of Hopkins, so it could open it up for him, but there's no Kyler there.
I
could easily see him being anywhere from tight end 1 in these 2 classes to totally irrelevant. And that goes with everybody in this class, too. I don't think any of them are transcendent-esque talents.
See, I really like this class, and I would be remiss without bringing up another rookie tight end I like from last year, and Jake Turd Ferguson, and a guy who's getting a lot of love in Tennessee, which is Chig Okonkwo. I'm sure, I'm 100% sure that I absolutely butchered that man's name. Huh?
I think you did okay. I don't think that was that bad.
Okonkwo. Chig. I just call him Chig.
Honestly, he's probably my tight end 1 in between these 2 classes, just because he's shown something. I've seen something. I've seen a pulse.
I think tight end, I'm going to wait and we're going to redo this exercise after the NFL draft because I think there's some good athletes in there. But I got to say that I really liked, as an Indianapolis Colts fan, and obviously I see all the games, and he's a big dude. He's an athletic dude. And I think Trey McBride's going to be a steal. I know Zach Ertz is still there, but he's like 31, 32, coming off of an ACL. Injuries don't heal better when you get in your 30s. Ask me how I know. And it's one of those things. It's like, but I like the rookies better than these guys. But knowing that Trey McBride is in Arizona, and we've seen how Kyler Murray like funnels the ball to the middle of the field, and they're probably going to be moving on from DeAndre Hopkins, and Zach Ertz is coming off of the ACL, it really makes me like Trey McBride. So I will be more, and I think we'll both be more prepared to really combat these guys. But if I had to rank them, and that's what people want to hear is rankings, I'm still going to stick with Michael Mayer, stick with Kincaid. I like Musgrave more than most. The big guy from Georgia Washington. Is that it? Darnell Washington?
Yep.
I'm pretty sure I got that right. And then McBride. I think I would have him 5 in this class. Knowing, but in fairness to these other guys, knowing he's a Cardinal, knowing what the situation is, the rest of these guys, I think Chig would be right there at 6. I know everybody likes Laporta and some of these other guys, but you know, Cade Otton, I didn't mention Cade Otton as well. Daniel Bellinger was going to be a thing until he got Darren Wallard. It's just such an interesting position, and they take so long
it's a
to
pain
hit.
In the ass of a position.
I think it makes the game fun.
Yeah, I mean it does. But the game's already hard, and tight end just makes it worse. Bastards.
That is true, Jerry. But let's get in the meat and the potatoes of it. Let's get into. You want to do wide receivers or running backs first?
We should just save running backs. It's always what everybody cares about.
That is what they may call the main event, Jerry. You know, like when you go watch a boxing or a UFC or even like a pro wrestling show, every card has a main event. I think people like the running back to be the main event. So we'll roll with it. So, Jerry, I'd say last year's class wasn't an all-timer. But I do believe it was a pretty darn good class, and I think there's a lot of guys that showed flashes that could have a good sophomore campaign.
I agree. I'm with you. I mean, just looking at it again and just sort of getting everybody that was impactful. Yeah, that was a good class, man.
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, as it was, once said.
But the cream will rise to the top. Oh, yeah.
And obviously the cream of last year's crop would have been, you know, Drake London, Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave. That was a big tear break for me. Then you get into guys like Treylon Burks, Sky Moore, a guy that you're hoping to see a lot more of this year, Jamison Williams, George Pickens, Christian Watson had a nice stretch. Wan'Dale Robinson was flashing a little bit before he got hurt. But as we start mixing these guys in, who is your 2023 wide receiver 1?
If we're mixing these two classes?
No, I just want to know. So 2 separate questions. Who is your number one?
2023?
Yes, sir.
Jackson Smith and Jigba.
Okay, so
I'm by himself.
I'm gonna give you a would you rather. Okay. And then eventually you're gonna say stop.
Okay. I'd rather have Jackson Smith and Jigba.
More than Drake London.
Yes.
Jackson Smith and Jigba over Garrett Wilson.
Yes.
So he would be your 101 in these 2 classes combined.
Correct.
Wow.
He played with Garrett Wilson. He played with Chris Olave, and he had them on the bench. They were second fiddle to him at Ohio State.
I mean, I wasn't expecting you just to go straight scoreboard, bitch, but, you know, there you are. You and Jackson Smith and Jigba said, get your ass on that bench. Go sit around. So, okay, that's bold. I have not heard that level of take so far in this class. Well, then, Jerry, that's
wild to me. They literally played on the same team. And
you're not wrong.
The star was JSN, but okay.
You're not wrong. And I think this is the take that the people are here for. This is the cold hard facts. And while we've seen Chris Olave in the pros and we've seen Garrett Wilson in the pros and some of these guys, Jerry feels that convinced that Jackson Smith and Jigba is the one. As the kids would say, Jackson Smith and Jigba is him. So who's your wide receiver 2 in this class?
Garrett Wilson. Oh, in this class, Jordan Addison. Sorry.
Jordan Addison. So I'm going to hit you with the would you rather because you made that last one a whole lot of not fun.
Yes.
Okay. Are you ready?
Yep.
So you can tell me, I'm going to just call him out as I like him, and you can tell me when to stop.
Yep.
So Jordan Addison or Drake London?
Drake London.
Jordan Addison or Garrett Wilson?
Garrett Wilson.
Jordan Addison or Jamison Williams?
I feel like they're the
Lions fan.
same. I feel like they're the same, but I am going to say Jamison.
Okay. Jordan Addison or Chris Olave?
Chris Olave.
Jordan Addison or Christian Watson?
We are going to go with Jordan Addison right there.
Okay, and then finally, Traylon Burks or Jordan Addison?
Jordan Addison.
You know what's funny, and I've you know I love Traylon Burks. Some people would say he had a weight problem. Some people would say he developed asthma. Jerry, did you know that as we're growing in a podcast that I have like inside recordings into conversation between Traylon Burks and head coach Mike Vrabel? Did you know that I have that inside conversation?
I did not know you had sources on the inside.
Would you like to hear that conversation? Because I have it recorded.
I am curious what you have set up.
Let me get the recording set up for you. This is an actual conversation between Traylon Burks and Mike Vrabel. Because you know Mike Vrabel, not a big fan of Traylon Burks, it seems.
True.
Okay. Well, here's the conversation. You tell me what you think of this conversation. You ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
Holy Jesus. What is that? What the fuck is that? What is that?
Sir, jelly donuts, sir!
A jelly donut?
Sir, yes, sir!
How did it get here?
Sir, I took it from the mess hall, sir!
Is chow allowed in the barracks?
Sir, no, sir!
Are you allowed to eat jelly donuts?
Sir, no, sir!
And why not?
Sir, because I'm too heavy, sir!
Because you are a disgusting fat body.
I mean, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say that Mike Vrabel, not a big fan of Traylon Burks.
Should not have brought the jelly donut.
He shouldn't. I mean, and listen, we're just having some fun. Love having fun. Was never a Traylon Burks guy. I actually hope that they take a wide receiver like Jackson Smith and Jigba at the 111. They drafted 11th overall in the NFL draft, and I hope it just nerfs him even more because I don't think he's a good wide receiver. I don't think he's a good wide receiver prospect. I think he just got away with in college just running around and like no real semblance of a route and just, you know, out athleted everybody kinda. But okay. So anybody else in this 2023 class? Oh, and by the way, I know Traylon Burks isn't fat. He's a fucking pro athlete. It's a joke, people. It's a gimmick. It's a bit. It's a show. Anyway, Jerry, I digress. Are there any other rookies in this 23 class that you would have ranked over their peers in the 2022 class, like Quentin Johnston, any of those guys?
No, you'd have to go down pretty far on the list, like even past the George Pickens, potentially Jahan Dotson. You'd have to get down there before I start thinking about it.
You know, back in the day, nowadays bands just have there's hardly even any bands really, but like back in the the old days, you'd have like a lead singer, like Gladys Knight and the Pips. That's what this draft class feels like. It feels like like Smokey Robinson and the Temptations. If you like old Motown, like my dad loved old Motown, so I was raised on that. So in this class, it feels like that Jackson Smith and Jigba is Smokey Robinson. He is Gladys Knight, and the rest of these guys are the Temptations or are the Pips. They're backing up Jackson Smith and Jigba, and they would not scratch the surface amongst the Chris Olave, even Traylon Burks. I'll be honest. It would be a coin, like if I were doing a startup with the rookies already in there and not the picks, and I was drafting a young wide receiver, not knowing where Zay Flowers is as a rookie. Like Zay Flowers in New York Giants, I probably like more than Traylon Burks. Zay Flowers in, say, Baltimore with a tumultuous quarterback situation, I might lean Burks. But this is a pretty top-heavy wide receiver class.
True. I mean, running back class is sort of the same way, though. I mean, it's juicier. Don't get me wrong, but it's still sort of that.
Let me do the people a favor. Now, how do you feel about guys like Wan'Dale Robinson, Alec Pierce, John Mechie, Jahan Dotson? I think that's the tier behind the guys we've already talked about. How do you feel about those guys if they were sprinkled in with this 2023 class?
I think Jahan Dotson would probably be my wide receiver 3.
I literally threw up a 3 as Jerry was talking. If you're watching on YouTube, you would have saw that. That is not cap. That is fact. I threw up a 3 when Jerry said that about Jahan Dotson. I think I'm going to call my shot, Jerry. Can I call a shot?
I am going to agree with this shot if it's trending the way I think it's trending.
I think one of these teams is going to trade up to get like an Anthony Richardson at like 3. They're going to trade up with Arizona, who's already got Kyler Murray locked up. They're going to trade up. And then they're going to use other draft capital, including maybe even a future first. And they're going to trade for Terry McLaurin to be to that rookie. Let's say that we've heard rumors of the Tennessee Titans. Now, I would hate this because I'm a Colts fan and I hate the Titans, but I would love it because it would, in fact, stunt the fantasy growth of Treylon Burks. And that is, let's say, because Tennessee today was rumored to be trading up to 3 to try to get their quarterback.
Yeah.
Let's say Tennessee gave up, I don't know, they had to move up to get Anthony Richardson. And then they used other draft capital and they traded Washington to get Terry McLaurin. I think there's going to be a team with a year 1 or year 2. Well, maybe not even year 2 because the year 2 class sucked. It's Kenny Pickett. And he's already got George Pickens and Deontay Johnson. But that's a long way of saying that I think Terry McLaurin, based on his contract and I almost called him their old name, the Commanders' ability to win this year, I think Terry McLaurin could be on the move. And if not, I still think Jahan Dotson could be really good.
I just think Jahan Dotson's a touchdown machine.
I think
I don't know if he's ready for that level to be sort of a touchdown guy and just a dynamic wide receiver overall. But bro finds the end zone every single time with bad quarterbacks. So I am excited for guys like that. And he was awesome at Penn State. And
he's on my acquire list, man. I'm telling you.
Yeah,
he's
100%.
He is on my acquire list. And I know this is going to be a horrible comp. And if you're driving, put your hands at 10 and 2 and hold the fuck on. Now, I'm not saying Alec Pierce can be DK Metcalf. There is not another DK Metcalf. Only DK Metcalf can eat like a bag of like Sour Patch Kids and gummy bears every day and still look like he's carved out of granite. But I think Alec Pierce could be a guy with a strong arm quarterback. Let's say the Colts land Anthony Richardson or land Will Levis. We saw these guys. What Uncle Rico say in Napoleon Dynamite? Throw a football over that there mountains. Yeah. I think we saw at their pro days. I think Will Levis and or Anthony Richardson could throw a football over that there mountains. And with that, sub 4.4 speed and his size, I think Alec Pierce, man, when you need like a home run play in your even, obviously he's a best ball gym, but if you can put him in we play in a league where you got to start 12. He's the kind of like wide receiver 4, like flex 3 type guy that could really win you some weeks. And same thing with Wan'Dale Robinson. I would much rather, like if I'm on the clock getting ready to draft, say, I don't know, Jerry, I don't love a ton of these rookie wide receivers. Like I like Marvin Mims. I called him Bursty T.Y. Hilton.
Yeah.
He's got like a profile, but if I was getting ready to hit the draft button on like a Rashee Rice or a Jalen Hyatt, I would much rather trade for some of these guys that we're talking about, like Wan'Dale Robinson, Alec Pierce, those kind of guys.
I'm cool. I'm cool with that. Just a little sidebar. Also, all in on Michael Pittman. I know we're talking about 2 different rookie classes, but we talked about the Colts wide receivers. Bro is so undervalued right now. 99 catches in 16 games last year with dog shit quarterback play. Yeah, that's a buy every time.
All right. Well, Jerry, you know what we're going to do in our next mock draft? We're going to do this next Sunday. I'm holding you to it. Okay. We're going to get you. Now I'm going to figure out how to do this to where I can share it with the people watching YouTube and recap it for the people who are listening. We're not going to throw the quarterbacks in there because that would make it less comprehensive, less fun. But we're going to get you, maybe a guest, a couple of the patrons over at patreon.com/Dynasty WarZone, and we'll actually mock it. We'll rock it and we'll mock it, and we'll get a mock draft. We'll make it eligible for freshmen and sophomores. Okay. Done and done. Oh, I like how Jerry nods his. I love how Jerry nods his head. Great for the for the YouTube audience, not so much for the podcast audience. But Jerry, let's get into it. Main event time.
Yep.
Let's talk running backs. I think this is a class. I think we talked a little bit of hesitancy around the quarterbacks and tight ends from last year's class, but I think the running back class ended up being better than we thought.
True.
But it wasn't great, Jerry.
No, it wasn't, but it was also because we have 2 young stars, and we have 2 intriguing players, and we have one that's a little spicy and could be good in James Cook.
I think that's true. Now, I want to put you to a test. I want to hit you with a hypothetical, and I hate hypotheticals almost as much as I hate comps, but I want to hit you with a hypothetical.
Well, we're Dynasty content creators, buddy. We got to do hypotheticals.
We got to, and buddy, the draft is like 3.5 weeks away, so we're doing the Lord's work over here at the Dynasty WarZone. So let's say hypothetically, Breece Hall never gets injured, and he keeps up that pace that he was on through week 7 or 8 last year, double-digit fantasy points in every single game in the PPR format. Where would you have put Breece Hall versus Bijan Robinson? Because mind you, one guy did it. One guy had done it and done it well. Now, the ACL is scary. He's getting ready to potentially get a quarterback upgrade. I think Aaron Rodgers is going to show up.
Yep.
Seems like he's healthy enough to tell Zeke Elliott to beat feet when he said he wanted to go to the Jets. And it's going to be him and Michael Carter. Knowing Breece Hall's a Jet, knowing he was dominating, pretend like the ACL never happened. Where would you put the Breece Hall versus Bijan debate?
I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think there's a real difference between any of the top 3. I think you can have them.
I think that is spicy.
I don't. I think any one of K9, Breece Hall, or Bijan Robinson could end up being the best of the bunch, and I don't think any of them are going to be very different from the others. I think K9 proved that he can pass catch and that he's just an incredible running back. Breece Hall looked like he was going to set the world on fire before he got hurt. And Bijan Robinson is the best prospect that we've seen probably since Saquon. So,
definitely since Saquon. I mean, I don't think there's any. I think between him and Saquon, there's a lot of good running backs. I think looking back at it retrospectively, I think Jonathan Taylor should be in that mix because he was a pretty damn good athlete.
Yeah.
And has the RB1, and not just an RB1, but a really good RB1 season under his belt, excuse me. So I like Bijan, but you're not blown away by him over Breece Hall. If the injury never happened.
No, even now, I don't care about the injury. The injury is irrelevant to me.
So where do you have them in your rankings?
They're all the same. They're probably all right around like RB 3 to 5 or 2 to 4 or I mean I still got JT at 1, but
same. So I have them in a tier, right? I like Bijan, but my RB1, my top 5 RBs for me is JT. He's only going into year 4. Going to get a QB upgrade, getting an offensive-minded head coach. Not that Frank Reich wasn't, but I think we're going to see some good stuff, especially if they pair him with a mobile quarterback.
Matt, we talked earlier. Either you're winning because of players or in spite of players, and people won championships because of Jonathan Taylor. That's the reason that motherfucker stays at 1, and he's young, and he's under contract, and he's built like a linebacker.
Hey, look at
I don't
Jerry.
care about last year.
I'm really proud of Jerry running a thread back through this show. So I have JT at 1. And then depending on the day, I really, because of the ACL, I'm just going to be quite honest, between the ACL, I go back and forth between Kenneth Walker as my 2 and Breece Hall as my 2. So they're 2, 3. I have Bijan at 4. I've never seen him play a fucking snap in the NFL, but that's how much respect I have for his college profile, for his athleticism. I'm showing that man a lot of respect. And then I do, even though he's going into year 5 of his career with some injury baggage of his own in Saquon Barkley. That's my 5. If I'm doing a dynasty rankings today, those are my 5. For me, it's splitting hairs.
Exactly. You could switch any of those 5 guys into any combination in my
because I can't unsee Breece Hall. Literally every game he played, every game, even like the first game when he wasn't like the feature guy, every game he played was double-digit points. That's pretty good. I know it was a small sample, 7 games, but that's pretty damn good. and I know his offense is going to be better, and I know he's going to score. And I don't know where Bijan is. Now, if Bijan lands in a plum situation, like let's say Miami, I got to reevaluate. If Bijan goes 11 to Tennessee, which seems odd, but that's not a great spot because, Derrick Henry's wrapping up a contract. If he goes 12 to Houston, okay. Still Dameon Pierce is kind of like James Robinson, Travis Etienne all over again type vibe. But you get my point. It's very tier-based. I don't blame you for having one ahead of the other. So that's fair. Now let's get in the meat and the taters of it. So clearly the top three are some combination of Bijan, Brees, and Kenneth Walker.
Yep.
Where do you put Jahmyr Gibbs in that group? Let's say Jahmyr Gibbs, or I keep clicking back and forth between I don't know. Where do you put him amongst that three? How far? What's the gap? What's the gap between those three and Jahmyr Gibbs? Is it like a small hole, or is it the Grand Canyon?
It's a hole. I don't think it's a Grand Canyon, but it could be. I want to see where he goes and the draft capital that goes with it, and sort of what's that situation looks like. But I could easily see him. The rate at which running backs not of his caliber are making an impact in the NFL currently makes me believe that he can absolutely make an impact in the NFL. So I think he's probably in a tier by himself, right below those guys in these two classes. I think the first three are pick whoever you want. They're absolutely guys that you want as cornerstone pieces of a dynasty roster. And then I think there's Jahmyr Gibbs in a tier by himself. And then there's sort of everybody else in between these two classes that it's a jumble of like 10 guys, because this class is, thicker than a bowl of honey. And last year's class has a couple guys who have shown that they can at least be RB2s.
All right. Well, you got me. You got me on that. I do agree. Jahmyr is in a group all on his own. So now, anything else before we get into this? Because I'm going to get into that next tier of guys.
Rachaad White, though. I do like Rachaad White.
Well, that's where I'm
Rachaad White sort of being in that Jahmyr Gibbs sort of tier up there. I really like him a lot. I'm guessing I will have a lot of him in startups this year.
Perfect. So now I'm going to kind of give you like some situations. All right. I'm going to give you the would you rather between two guys from this class.
Perfect.
So you mentioned James Cook.
Yep.
He got some company in the form of a guy that I really like in Damian Harris. Can't stay healthy. I think when he plays, he's a pretty darn good football player, but health is wealth, and the best ability is availability. So let me hit you with a guy who I think could be somewhat comparable, excuse me. Devon Achane or James Cook?
James Cook. Easily for me.
By a lot? By a little?
By a lot. He's too little for me. I don't know if he's going to be able to hold up. Okay.
That is totally fair. What about a more of a bruiser guy? I think a guy that could actually have a similar role in the NFL, all things being equal. A guy that is growing on me in Zach Charbonnet, or a name you just mentioned, Rachaad White.
That one's close, bud. You got me with that one. Just not knowing, I think I'll say Rachaad White, just because I could have seen how unbelievable he is as a pass catcher, and that's always going to create that floor that's just so juicy. But that also, 365 days from now, we could look back on this episode, and that might be the dumbest thing I say all podcast.
Maybe. All right, let me hit you with like a three-headed monster of guys that are all kind of in a similar bag. A little three-way action,
Hey now.
Little three-way. Let's talk Tank Bigsby, Tyler Algier, and Brian Robinson. Big guys between the tackles, grinders, not a huge pass-catching profile. Who of those three do you want number one, and then just rank them for me?
God, it's weird because like initially I'm like, okay, I want Brian Robinson, but I also don't really like Brian Robinson. I think Antonio Gibson is just straight up better than he is, and they just keep not giving him the job. So I think I might say Evans. Actually, I'm just not a believer in Algier. I'm not sure that he's going to be.
Evans, you mean Bigsby? Bigsby.
Bigsby, yes. Sorry. Algier just does not. Ugh, he's just so boring. Like he's a nice value to have. Like you're happy you have him because you got exponentially more than you thought you were going to. I just don't think it's going to be a long-term thing. And I think that's sort of the case with all of these guys. So I think I will swing for a ceiling with Tank and just hope that that's how it plays out. That one's tough though. I don't have a good answer for that one.
All right. I mean, let's go for one I'm gonna call the Battle of Texas. Damian Pierce or your boy Kendre Miller.
Probably Kendre Miller. I'm not in on Damian Pierce. And maybe that's the stupidest thing that I ever say on this podcast. Honestly. But I love Kendre Miller's contact balance. It's Kareem Hunt. And I'm going to say it on every podcast. I'm going to say it every single time somebody brings that up because it's the bread and butter of what made Kareem Hunt the person that he was. And I just think Kendre Miller can do it. I just think he is going to be a player in this league. And in a couple of months, if I look super stupid, add it to the Corey Davis talk. Add it to the Hakeem Butler talk. We'll get there. But he's somebody I like how he plays. And so I'm going to have a lot of them.
All right. I got one last one for you, and then we're going to take this one home.
Cool.
We're going to talk about one of my guys. My guy, Sean Tucker,
okay,
or the aforementioned James Cook.
I think I'm going to take James Cook. He showed he's in a good offense. Like we said about Damian Harris, he gets hurt. He was a good pass catcher. He had pretty good yards per attempt. James Cook did at least. And I don't know where Sean Tucker's going to end up. Second round to the Buffalo Bills is a pretty damn juicy spot for any running back to go. So it's going to be tough to overcome that. And I just like James Cook better.
Well, I don't agree. I love Sean Tucker. I think Buffalo likes James Cook so much they went and signed Damian Harris. They brought in Naheem Hines.
They also got rid of Devin Singletary, who had been their guy, and they could have signed him for cheap.
That is fair, and there's a lot of running backs in this draft. But you know why I like Sean Tucker? He's 5'9".
How tall are you? Sir, 5'9", sir! 5'9". I didn't know they stacked shit that high. You trying to squeeze an inch in on me somewhere, huh?
I mean, any reason to play drops on the podcast, that's what I'm here for. Actually,
especially Full Metal Jacket ones.
Dude, you talk about a classic. That should be required watching for just about everybody because it's so good. So that was Jerry and I trying to make a lack of news, a lack of movement. I mean, the combine's over, pro days are largely over. As you're listening to this on Wednesday, we are 3 weeks away from the draft on Thursday. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, what would that be? Like the 5th? Sounds right. Wednesday, the 5th of, if you're listening to this, we're 3 weeks away.
Yeah.
We're 3 weeks and a day away. So we're going to continue to do this. We're going to hit up some more mock drafts. Like I said, next week we're going to grab some patrons, grab some guests, and we're gonna mock draft the 2022 class versus the 2023 class. We're just going to put them all in a sack. We're going to shake that sack up, and we're going to draft. So Jerry, this one went a little long for us. We tried to keep this mug right around it, but it was good conversation.
True.
And give me a cheap reason to hang out with you. Well, Jerry, I'm not going to put you on the spot. But maybe on Wednesday we can do another bonus show.
Oh.
We'll see if any news pops off. Maybe Aaron Rodgers finally gets traded. Maybe Lamar figures something out. We'll see what other coach. We'll see what other coach speak comes up. If we can find a reason to give you a bonus, we will. If you're listening to this in the future, go back to Monday and listen to Dallas talk about rookies on the Rookie Rundown. I'm trying to predict the future in that hopefully tomorrow you have an episode of the Dynasty War Games, and then I'll see about getting this man back on for a bonus show. But Jerry, thank you so much. It's a good show.
True. Always fun.
Always fun. Well, listen, on behalf of that man, his name is Jerry Sinclair. My name is Memphis. You can follow him at JerrySinDWZ. You can follow me at DWZ Memphis. And remember, here at the Dynasty WarZone, we're just trying to make the world a better place for fantasy football. We'll see you back here real soon with more rookie and Dynasty talk. Thank you all.